Hello, happy Friday. Welcome to the Daily Fantasy Cafe on Air podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL on Twitter. And you excited for this plethora of injuries we have tonight for this huge slate tonight?
Yes and no. It's probably going to be pretty crazy before tip-off, but create some real opportunities if you're paying attention.
Yeah. I mean, it's a mess, but like you said, I mean that's where a big advantage lies. You know, you get the guys that are going to step up in some players' absences potentially, and we'll highlight some of those guys that'll bump up, bump down accordingly. So definitely. Disclaimer: monitor Twitter all day. I got some hate the other day for someone we talked about at 11 o'clock in the morning, and was listed as doubtful all of a sudden. Rudy Gay at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So just because we say it in the morning doesn't mean they aren't getting sick. And even as we were getting ready for this, you noticed that LeBron James missed shoot-around and is now questionable with an illness. So all kinds of news coming up. Guys resting, guys getting sick. So what we're saying now in the morning, definitely not the be-all, end-all. So do your own due diligence. Make sure your guys are playing before you finalize your rosters there.
Yeah, that and check out our articles on dailyfantasycafe.com throughout the day. I mean, those will give you a little more insight as these injury situations break and who we like because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And both of us on Twitter a lot, so if you got any questions later on, hit one of us up. We'll be more than happy to help you out with that. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get things started here. We're going to talk FanDuel and DraftKings, consolidate everything for you here. Apologies to FanDuel for the DraftKings shirt. It's just way more comfortable than my FanDuel shirt.
I could have put my FanDuel shirt on.
Yeah, but we'll have to switch next time.
I agree with you as far as the comfort level, because I don't know if you have the same FanDuel shirt as me, but the one I have is just a giant logo right here.
Just a big F.
Yeah, and it just like sticks to your chest, and it's just a huge logo.
Yeah, and I'm very long, and this is more of a slim fit DraftKings shirt, whereas the FanDuel one's kind of wide. So anyway, take notes there, FanDuel. Slim fit shirts, maybe a little less boring. Maybe send us a couple, and I'll wear them next time.
There you go.
All right, either way, going on to point guard here. We're going to go, obviously not talk about every single player on tonight's slate. We got a huge 12-game slate. Like we said, tons of injuries, so we'll let you know what's going on there. But we're going to highlight a couple players at each position. Point guard, got to go with the obvious question. Russell Westbrook, $13,200 on FanDuel. DraftKings at $12,500. To Westbrook or not to Westbrook tonight?
I think a lot of it depends on the value available after these injuries are taken into account. I mean, if guys like Bino Udrih or some other cheaper guys open up, I really don't have a problem paying up for Russell Westbrook. It just really depends on your comfort level of the rest of your lineup, trying to squeeze him in there. I think he'll come close to paying off salary, which is around 55 to 60 fantasy points. He's really been in that range, even though he's not, having that huge high upside 80-plus fantasy point game. He's paying off solid value. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of profit potential. But yeah, if he works, definitely fit him in.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, he's been paying off his salary with not a lot of upside, like you said, but also obviously Serge Ibaka out with that knee surgery. We've got Enes Kanter now questionable for tonight, so he was picking up a lot of the offensive load there. So definitely some value picks up. I'm going to be getting myself some Russell Westbrook. Not going to be a whole lot of options, and yeah, the Hawks are a good defensive team, but they don't have a legitimate rim protector. Al Horford doesn't count. He's undersized. And the athleticism that Russell Westbrook has, I'm not really concerned about Al Horford down low.
Yeah, and I mean, consider this. This is the highest scoring game of the day. 212 over under. 1 point spread with Oklahoma City playing at home. So, I mean, you have to love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, should be a close game. And, I mean, Russell Westbrook without many other options on that team, as usual. Finally had someone emerge. Now he might not play tonight. So monitor Kanter's status, because I think that Westbrook gets a sizable bump if he can't go.
40 shots again? Or...
Hey, it could be. I mean, he's taken 25 to 30 pretty much every game now. And, I mean, he's not even shooting that effectively. I mean, he's shooting right around 40 to 42% most games. So, if he gets hot one of these nights, that's the night you're going to want him. So,
right.
Obviously, a lot of other options. Some other guys we're going to be looking at. Just to give you a couple injuries here at point guard. John Wall, questionable. Kyle Lowry says he's 50-50. He's officially questionable. Isaiah Thomas, obviously, still out. And George Hill looks like he'll go. He was listed as questionable. Looks like he's fine. Mike Conley, questionable also. And those are the only significant ones. I don't need to tell you about Jose Calderon. That's not all that important.
Yep.
Yeah, a couple other guys to talk about here at point guard. I want to get your take on Michael Carter-Williams. His price finally down to $7,500. Really frustrating player to play, but significant upside, and now almost at a playable range there on FanDuel. I mean, on DraftKings, he's just 6,700, but 75 on FanDuel is intriguing to me in the tournament.
I don't want him. He wasn't on my list. I think there's better ways to go if you're bumping up or bumping down. Yeah, in a tournament, he's going to have a low ownership percentage, because a lot of people got bit by him the last couple games, whether it was the injury or, he was just kind of ineffective last game. But yeah, he's a guy with high upside, great peripherals, decent matchup. He's just not really on my radar. A couple guys I'm looking at, I'd rather bump up to Damian Lillard maybe. At Orlando, this is only a 7-point spread, so, Portland playing on the East Coast should be a little tighter game. And Orlando is just not very good against point guards. Otherwise, you can look on the other side of that, and Elfrid Payton also, he's been killing it for Orlando. I don't mind him at, 6.5K on DraftKings? I think that's a pretty solid salary.
Yeah, and to mention that, with Lillard, that's a great find, too, because his price down really, really low. We've seen him up around 9K, but $7,600 on FanDuel, on DraftKings, and $8,200 on FanDuel. He's at a very playable level. When he was up around 9K, you need 40 plus for it to be worth it. But, now that you're seeing him at 7,600 on DraftKings, he could put up 30 and he's not going to hurt you. So I definitely like that with the discount. Some other guys playing really well. Goran Dragic, $7,000 on FanDuel and $6,600 on DraftKings. 41 and 43 fantasy points last two games. We've seen Dwayne Wade obviously kind of shouldering the load, but it's been a two-man show with these two guys, and he's getting more minutes than Wade, not significantly more, but Wade now down in the low 30s and playing a lot of minutes. He's having to do a lot, so I definitely like Dragic in this spot too.
I do too. I'll probably have him in majority of cash games tonight. Like you said, the matchup lines up great on top of that recent production, so I don't think his salary is too inflated either. It's up just a little bit, but it's not really offsetting those 40 fantasy point games he's had in the past 2 or 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And not a scoring dependent guy either, which is great, especially for a point guard, because surprisingly today's game has a lot of scoring dependent guys that control the ball, and Dragic's not one of those guys. He's got 10 assist upside every time. So another interesting play here. Give me your take on him. I actually prefer his teammate. Alexei Shved is obviously the popular play. Shved sanity, but 43 minutes played last night. Got another little revenge game here for one of the many teams he's played for. 7,000 on FanDuel, 6,600 on DraftKings. I don't think he's a must-play tonight. I know he was pretty much must-play on a short slate tonight. I will not have very much Alexei Shved. Not that he's a bad play, I just think there's better options.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. You could go Elfrid Payton, Goran Dragic, basically at the same price, like we said, and Jeff Teague, who's another guy I like it, as we said in that high-scoring game against Oklahoma City. So just looking at it that way, I don't think Shved's a must, even though the matchup is pretty good. I like him in a tournament. You can actually pair him with Dragic, on DraftKings or FanDuel, and go that route if you want to.
Yeah, and I think a nice swerve, kind of getting the same matchup there against Philly, is you can go Langston Galloway. $5,000 on FanDuel and 48 on DraftKings. Over 30 fantasy points, 2 in a row. He's obviously playing big minutes. They have to. You and I were talking before the show about how the Knicks actually had to hire, or I guess sign for a day, a D-leaguer, to even have enough players to be eligible last night. So no choice but to play big minutes for these two guys. So I think I'll probably just take the discount. He doesn't have quite the upside, but he's got a nice safe floor. So I think I'll probably be going Galloway in tournaments, a little bit different for a lower percentage.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yep. One other guy I want to touch on here, get your take on, who's playing really well, finally seems to have taken over the starting job, but minutes still not there, not playing 30 minutes a game, just upper 20s. Ish Smith, What's your thoughts on Ish Smith tonight?
Like you said, the minutes just. I mean, I don't know if he sees enough minutes to consider him for that rising price point.
Yeah.
I think he's an okay play. I don't think he's going to hurt you, but I just think the upside's really pretty capped. I mean, you're not going to get a whole lot of profit potential for tournaments.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, definitely. If he was getting more minutes, I mean, it seems like that's about his ceiling. What he did last game, 15-8 with 3 steals. Not going to get much better than that. So I'm
Yeah, I mean,
there.
yeah, and if that's best case scenario, if he has a bad game, like, I don't know, you just have to look at the range of outcomes that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And with a ton of options on 12 game slate, don't think he's necessary. Anybody else you like at point guard, or are you ready to move on to shooting guard?
Bino Udrih as a little cash game filler if Mike Conley's out. He's a decent, efficient scorer that, I mean, you can consider he's not going to really hurt your team, and he's going to give you salary cap relief to reach up to some of the studs, so...
Yeah, I'm on board with that one. I mean, he's, like you said, solid. He's not going to be spectacular. He's not going to score 35 fantasy points, but he should easily pay off his price tag. So, solid play there. Moving on to shooting guard, where we've been saying it for a while, and I'm going to continue to say it. Dwayne Wade, $8,400 on FanDuel, and still under $8K somehow on DraftKings. They're giving up discounts once again. $7,900 on DraftKings. Like I said, down to low 30s in minutes, but he's taking a ton of shots. He's got a high usage rate. And Denver coming off a game where they just got absolutely shredded by James Harden last night. Somehow, that was his career high, 50 points. I mean, maybe I'm the only one in the world surprised that James Harden hasn't scored 50 points in a game. But, I mean, maybe he's just had a lot of 45-point games. But either way, Dwayne Wade in a great spot tonight.
Yeah, Corey Brewer had more 50-point games than him heading into last night. But, yeah, I like Wade. At some point in time, there's going to be the moment where we fade Dwayne Wade. But I really don't think this is it. This is just a great matchup at home against a Denver team that ranks 27th against shooting guards. They're playing on a back-to-back. Relatively high over-under, 208 and a 7-point spread. I mean, all the things just really line up in his favor, even though he's only seeing 32 minutes. So if this was an average matchup, I would probably push back on it a little. But, I mean, he just looks like a great pick in the situation.
Yeah, I completely agree there. And, I mean, there's really no scoring options, like we've already said, in Miami. I mean, Hassan Whiteside's really cooling off from his Superman status he had there for a little while. So it's pretty much Dragic and Wade there. And they don't have enough consistency on offense to really blow many teams out. So you like to think this one's going to stay close. And Vegas tends to agree. I mean, a 7-point spread isn't ideal, but should stay close till the end.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up at shooting guard, I'm looking at DeMar DeRozan. Obviously more if Kyle Lowry ends up sitting. Maybe Toronto errs on the side of caution here. But DeRozan with a huge usage rate with Kyle Lowry out. And aside from that, he's just playing great basketball. I mean, his worst game in his last 8 games, he had 1 game under 30 fantasy points. So he's playing big minutes as he does, 35 to 40. He's taken quite a few shots, 15 to 20 per game. Should see easily, right around that range tonight, especially if Lowry sits. And Chicago, not an ideal matchup, but their best defender, who also happens to be a shooting guard, is officially out once again, Jimmy Butler. So I love DeMar DeRozan tonight.
Yeah, I like that too. I think he can really be in the same range as Wade if you look at it that way. And you want to save a little bit of cap space. You could reach down to him or, find a way to get both in your lineup too. I don't think that's a bad route to go either.
Yeah, and I feel like DeRozan probably the higher upside player because, Wade is scoring in the 40s, even high 40s some games right now. But, if you want the higher upside, you want the guy who's going to have probably a higher usage, especially if Lowry sits, and then he's playing a couple more minutes. So I like to think he's got the higher. He's my preferred tournament play of the two.
Mm-hmm.
All right, elsewhere at shooting guard, I'm going to get your take on someone cheap. Been a guy that I've been loving the last few games, and he's still really, really cheap, playing well. A lot of his points coming late, though, which is a little bit concerning. But Randy Foye, 41, 30, and 39 fantasy points his last 3 games, taking quite a bit of shots. Did play 35 minutes last night, but hadn't played since the 16th before then. Everybody was on the Will Barton train, and it seems like Randy Foye has kind of locked that down. I mean, Barton played less than 20 minutes last night. Foye got hot from the field. He's, like I said, $4,300 on DraftKings and 46 on FanDuel. So I absolutely love him as a punt tonight.
Yes, if Randy Foye is starting, I agree 100%. I don't know. Denver's kind of weird right now because they're just randomly resting guys,
Yeah.
even though they aren't really injured. But they're basically in tank mode, you can say.
Yep.
But yeah, if he's starting, if we can confirm him as a starter, yeah, I really like him. His price hasn't crept up relative to his recent production, and yeah, he has the upside. And there's really no one else in this price range you can feel comfortable with. So yeah, if he's starting seeing 35 minutes, I really like him.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I mean, at that price, if he gets 15 to 18 fantasy points, obviously not ideal, but a bad shooting night, and that's still not going to kill your team. That's a decent return for his price tag. So I think he's a very low risk, high reward type of guy tonight.
Yep.
All right, elsewhere at shooting guard, there's a couple other guys I'm looking at. If you want to go really cheap, this is a guy that people have been talking about. I'm not a big fan. He's way too scoring dependent and similar price to Randy Foye. Anthony Morrow, not for me. What's your take on Anthony Morrow?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. He's a streaky shooter that only scores. I mean, he doesn't get rebounds. He doesn't steal the ball. He doesn't do assists at all. So, I mean, yeah, he's just not a very good fantasy player.
No, and I mean he's been shooting at a ridiculous clip recently. I mean his last few games from 3-point range, 6 of 9, 3 of 6, 3 of 5, 3 of 7, 4 of 7. He's not keeping that up. I mean he has over the last few games, but I'm not chasing a guy knocking down 3-pointers.
Yeah, I mean.
So, either way, anybody else you're looking at shooting guard here tonight?
Maybe Lou Williams if Kyle Lowry's out. His usage rate is going to bump along with DeMar DeRozan's and, probably his playing time too. I think he's a sneaky tournament pick if Lowry's out.
Yeah, completely agree there. I mean, you look at his last couple times, the last 3 times he played, 29 or more minutes, he scored 31, 35, and 38 fantasy points. So definitely some huge upside there at his price. All right, we're going to move on here to small forward and top option price-wise, obviously, LeBron James. You already mentioned that he's questionable with an illness, missed shoot-around. I was not targeting LeBron James in this matchup. Slow pace against Indiana anyway. Should be a grinded-out type of game. Maybe he has a good game. The chances that he pays off his tag and has upside to me seems very small, even if he is a full go. So LeBron James not for me either way. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I don't remember, did we mention Kyrie Irving in the point guard section?
No.
Okay, I mean, if LeBron's out, yeah, I'm probably going to have Irving in about 2/3 of my lineups, maybe, 50%, 60% of my lineups, which kind of goes without saying because he just enjoys such a boost in usage rate when LeBron's out, even though the matchup is pretty neutral. But otherwise, for small forwards, looking down the list here, you could go Kawhi Leonard playing up in pace against Boston. I really like that. I'm not sure how much of a blowout factor there is. Let me look at the spread here. Do you know the spread offhand?
I have it up here, 9.
You got a 9-point spread. So, I mean, it's okay if you want to look at it that way. I mean, there's still some risk in that, but I don't know. I like him in the spot. He produces across the board. Yeah, if you're paying up, I would probably go with Kawhi.
Yeah, I agree there. And the only other guy around that price tag I will be considering is Nicholas Batum. Orlando pretty terrible against small forwards. Whether Tobias Harris plays or not, he's one of the many players for Orlando listed as game time decisions tonight. He, Dwayne Dedman, Willie Green also, and obviously Evan Fournier is still out for them as well. So plenty of production to go around in the offensive end there, but targeting Orlando with small forwards is usually a winning proposition. And Nick Batum, some solid upside. 6,900 on both sides. I think that he's a nice pivot if you can't afford Kawhi, if you're paying up.
Yeah, I was going to mention that if you didn't. One question I have for you here is Rudy Gay is probable to play tonight. DeMarcus Cousins is questionable. If Cousins is ruled out and we get confirmation of that before lineups lock, would you look towards Rudy Gay against Charlotte?
I'm hesitant on Rudy Gay at Charlotte. Only because Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, really good defender, one of the better perimeter or wing defenders in the game. He did go 39 minutes, 31 fantasy points against them last time, a week or so ago. I don't remember for sure. I think DeMarcus Cousins sat that game. I got to find that out real quick. But I think that Cousins sat that one out, and if that's the case. No, he did play. Sorry, my mistake. But either way, I mean, Rudy Gay, yeah, he's a tournament play, but I don't think I'll be playing him in cash games just because, on paper it's a slower pace, tough matchup. If Cousins is out, I definitely like him more, obviously, with more usage to go around. But I just think he has I don't know. He's not as safe as I'd like him to be, especially coming off an injury.
Yeah, and one other guy who's risky in a different way, Draymond Green. There's a huge blowout potential here for a New Orleans team that's just decimated with injuries.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's an okay cash game play, and maybe he'll catch upside if this game somehow stays close, but I don't really see it, and I think he's capped around, 30, 35 fantasy points, just giving this scenario.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a really solid floor, like you mentioned, but also, once again, I mean, if Anthony Davis sits out or Tyreek Evans, who both could sit out, both sitting as questionable, Omar Ashik, doubtful, now left last night's game with an injury. I mean, like you said, they don't have a whole lot of bodies, and if either one of Tyreek or Anthony Davis sits out, I can't imagine them keeping that one close, so that's going to be tough. But Draymond is the one guy who tends to see more minutes if it gets out of hand. So, I mean, obviously with Klay Thompson out, maybe, but I just don't see it. The other guy I'm looking... Oh, go ahead.
I think we might be on the same page with who we're looking at next.
Amari Carroll?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's playing great.
Yeah. He is. And actually, I had him written up last time against Golden State. I wrote that up in the Pulse on Daily Fantasy Cafe as an under-the-radar guy, but I didn't play him in any of my lineups.
I had a ton of DeMarre Carroll that day.
He had like 40 fantasy points. I don't know. I pivoted to something stupid. I don't remember. I don't like to think about it. But, no, he's a great play. And like we said, I mean, like we keep saying, 212 over-under and basically a pick-em game. I mean, the Oklahoma City's been playing at a fast pace, and that just really feeds into his playing style. Just an open court type of game. Like we saw against Golden State, he can just work in transition, pick up some junk rebounds, and just pile up fantasy points that way.
Yeah, and I mean, he can kind of do it all. I mean, he gets steals, he gets blocks, and, Russell Westbrook hasn't exactly been taking care of the ball recently. And then the individual matchup there for DeMarre Carroll, what are you going to get, Kyle Singler? Doesn't matter who you're going to get on him. No one's going to be shooting the ball on DeMarre Carroll, any of those wing players for OKC. So maybe, like you said, he gets some junk rebounds, especially if he and his cancer sits, more rebounds to go around. I mean, Carroll can kind of do it all, and he's 5,800 on both sides. I think way underpriced for his recent production. So I'll once again have a ton of DeMarre Carroll.
Yep. And then if you want to go down a little bit cheaper, Andre Iguodala is another guy on my list. He's filling in. He's playing a little bit more. I guess his minutes are relatively the same, around 30 minutes. But he's seeing a little more production with Klay Thompson out. And if this one turns into a blowout, I still think he's going to see that 30 minutes, kind of like we saw against Atlanta. He's going to be playing in garbage time with people like Draymond sitting and all the other starters resting. So I like him in this spot. I think he's a decent bet to hit value at like 25, 28 fantasy points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I certainly trust him more than I trust Harrison Barnes, who was the guy that had the big game there last time, but way too scoring dependent, way too inconsistent, too low of a floor for me. And as we know, Iguodala can get steals, rebounds. He can kind of do it all. So I'm with you there.
I should note that he's a lot better priced on DraftKings. He's sitting at 4,400. And on FanDuel, he's 5,200, so take that into consideration.
Yeah, definitely. One other guy I want to mention here, he's actually a shooting guard on DraftKings, shooting guard in real life, small forward on FanDuel. Gerald Henderson gets the best matchup in the world against the Sacramento team that cannot defend shooting guards at all. Worst team in the league, actually. And Ben McLemore's supposed to be playing. Really doesn't matter because he doesn't play defense when he is out there, or score, really. So he's going to kind of be standing there in his position as he does, without much movement. The frustrating thing about Ben McLemore. But Gerald Henderson, I mean, he's got some upside. He's usually got a pretty safe floor. I mean, you look at what he's been doing recently. His only bad game, really, in his last 4 was against Utah. And we've talked about that a million times. I'm not playing anyone against Utah. I don't think you're doing that either. It's just a terrible matchup all around. So Gerald Henderson, I mean, he's getting minutes. I like him quite a bit tonight as like an under-owned tournament play.
Yeah, I really like that as a tournament play. And if you look at it, he's cheaper than Damari Carroll, and those guys basically the same price as Andre Iguodala on FanDuel, and really has probably more upside.
Yeah.
For the reasons you outlined.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a big fan there. And next up, we've got power forward. Obviously, the big dog here, Anthony Davis, questionable for tonight. Sat out last night, tweaked his ankle. I mean, if I have to speculate on this one, I'm saying that he sits. And this is obviously pure speculation. There's no indication he's going to be out, anything like that. It's all up in the air. But from my end, New Orleans isn't beating Golden State anyway. And why not just go ahead and rest Anthony Davis tonight? Get him ready for the next game. Maybe a more winnable game, because they need to win every game they can. And I don't see any reason to force Anthony Davis in there when they're in a playoff race right now in a game they probably aren't going to win no matter what.
I agree. I mean, that's what logic will tell you. But as we've seen, logic doesn't always, rise to the top here when you're dealing with NBA coaches. So, yeah, I would guess that he's not playing. Hopefully we can get confirmation before lineups lock. Otherwise, you're looking at LaMarcus Aldridge as the top option if you're going to pay up, at least in my eyes. He's been really solid as of late. Like we said with Lillard before, this game really isn't projected to be a blowout on the road at Orlando, and it's a pretty decent game environment for him. He'll likely draw Dwayne Dedman if Dedman starts again. And I just really can't picture him chasing Aldridge around the perimeter, getting in his face like that. I mean, Dedman's a pretty good interior defender, but I think this is an okay matchup for him.
Yeah, and if you look at his price on DraftKings, I mean, tremendous price, yes, $8,900. So, I mean, and he's playing some of the best basketball of anybody in the league really right now. I mean, shooting lights out. He's got 45, 46, 57 fantasy points his last three. I mean, against a poor rebounding team in Orlando, he should be a mortal lock for that double-double bonus on DraftKings as well. So, not that I'm not going to play him on FanDuel because he's still got a fine price over there. Just over, I believe it's $9,300.
96.
Oh, wow. Right. So, yeah, a $700 difference. So, a significantly better play on DraftKings there.
Mm-hmm.
I will definitely be getting some shares of LaMarcus Aldridge there. I love that. Love that call. I want to play Paul Millsap. I like the matchup. I think it's a good spot, but same time, I mean, you've been seeing low minutes. It's inconsistencies with Atlanta. I'm actually really scared to play anyone on Atlanta outside of Teague and Carroll. I mean, both the big men kind of been just getting rested because they've got a solid bench that's adequate enough that those guys can play 28 to 30 minutes a game. And I don't know. I'm apprehensive. I love the spot for Paul Millsap tonight, but I don't know if I can pay for him.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on your lineup configuration. If he works in comfortably, I say go for it. As we've been saying this whole podcast, this is really the game to target as far as over-unders go and competitiveness. And Serge Ibaka's out, so I mean, that creates a better opportunity for him in the power forward spot, a better matchup at least individually. Yeah, you're concerned with his minutes. Maybe they're preserving him a little bit. And Atlanta really likes to spread out production, which hurts his upside. But I think he's a solid cash game pick still.
Yeah, I definitely think he's a solid cash game pick. I just worry about the upside, I should have said, for tournaments because, as we've seen with Atlanta a million times, if the game's 12, 15 points in the fourth quarter, which it shouldn't be tonight, but if Enes Kanter sits, I wouldn't be stunned to see Atlanta coming off a big loss, play well. So I think I'm with you there. Should get 30 or 35 fantasy points, but not a guy I'm actively seeking in tournaments because you really just can't bank on the minutes and the upside with him.
Mm-hmm.
Other guys, I mean, Kenneth Faried, on paper a tough matchup, but this was on paper a tough matchup for LaMarcus Aldridge too, and obviously Faried, not a LaMarcus Aldridge type player, not that sort of talent, at least not yet. But Faried playing some of the best basketball of any power forward in the league right now. Been doing it in some tough matchups, doing it even in games with less minutes. So $6,900 on both sides. I still love Kenneth Faried tonight. Manimal.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. It's a decent spot. I mean, it should be a competitive game. He should get his minutes. I'm not really seeing a whole lot of foul trouble coming his way. He's usually a lot better at home per his career, but I mean, if you look at the past few road games, at Minnesota, at San Antonio, at New Orleans, Memphis, or he didn't play Memphis, but at Houston, he's been over 35 fantasy points in every game. So, I mean, I don't want to say you can throw that out the window, but I think it's a lot less of a concern. I mean, usually I take that into consideration, but I think I'm okay with it today.
Yeah, and this is another one of those instances where you realize that DVP isn't everything, because you look at this on paper, it looks like it's a tough matchup, but then you consider who Kenneth Freed's going to be matched up against tonight. I don't know, Udonis Haslam, whoever ends up being at power forward. I mean, they don't have a legitimate defender at the 4 tonight, so I think he's gonna feast down low.
Mm-hmm.
All right, elsewhere at power forward, not a lot that I love. Who are some other guys that you're looking at? I mean, you've got Nerlens Noel playing well, but banged up now. I don't know that I could pay his tag. Who else are you looking at?
I think Noel's a good tournament option. If he does get the minutes, I mean, he's going to excel in this matchup against New York. But we can't guarantee it because, he's banged up. Maybe it'll happen like last game where he re-aggravates that injury. It could very easily happen, and they just sit him out because, I mean, Philly has nothing to play for, and they really don't want to risk him. Yeah. So he's a good tournament in that regard with upside, but really wouldn't risk it in cash games. Looking down here a little further, Ursan Silva, he continues to produce, continues to see quality minutes in the 30-35 range. And if he keeps seeing those minutes, he's going to be around 30 fantasy points. His price has risen a little bit, but I don't think it's too prohibitive. You're looking at 5.4K on FanDuel and 5.2K on DraftKings. I like him on that spot, and I really don't see anyone else in that range, so I think he's the pick if you're going down below that 6K range.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's, like you said, pretty slim pickings down there low, so I do like that call. Outside of that, you're pretty much taking shots. If DeMarcus Cousins ends up sitting, we've seen Jason Thompson gets a little bit of a bump. More of a cash game play than a tournament, I guess, because should have a floor right around 20 points if he sees 30-plus minutes, but outside of that one monster game earlier this season, what was it, 22 and 22, something like that, that's not happening again. Don't go expecting that, but he should get you 20, 25 points if and only if DeMarcus Cousins sits out. If DeMarcus Cousins does not sit, don't you dare, do not play Jason Thompson.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I was going to say everything you said if you didn't bring it up. So
yeah, got to leave those disclaimers in there for the people that say, hey, you told me to play Jason Thompson. All right, moving on to center. We don't need to tell you that if he's playing, your top overall option is DeMarcus Cousins, $10,900 on FanDuel. DraftKings still late to the party on this one, or maybe just trying to bait people into it. $9,800 on DraftKings, still ridiculously cheap for his upside. I mean, he's matchup proof. Anyone who thinks otherwise is kind of insane, if you ask me. I mean, 52 fantasy points against Atlanta in a tough matchup. Washington, a less than ideal matchup, 45.5. I mean, played this same team last week, went for 20 and 14, 42 fantasy points on DraftKings. So you obviously want a little bit more than that, but if he plays, he's got a floor right around 35 to 40 fantasy points tonight.
Right, and I don't mean to get too off topic here, but do you remember, was it last week? Yeah, it was just 1 week ago. He played at Philly. He had a monster game, 39 points, 24 rebounds, and someone tweeted out before the game that DeMarcus Cousins is out.
Yeah, I saw that.
The daily fantasy community just ran with it, started retweeting it. Turns out this guy had like 100 followers. It was a guy that was at the game, and he was looking on the floor. He didn't see Cousins warming up. So he tweeted, DeMarcus Cousins is out. And it turns out he was just on the bench tying his shoe.
Yeah, I was one of the people that tweeted that guy.
So, if you took DeMarcus Cousins out because of that, and he went for 72 fantasy points, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did have
definitely
that
check
night.
your sources.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good tip there. Make sure you get reliable sources. Look for beat writers or the actual team, because I was one of the people that was giving that guy some backlash, because as soon as he tweeted that, I said, "What's your source?" And then I'm sure that tweet you were talking about where he said, "Oh, he was tying his shoes." I was like, "So you just decided to tell everyone he was out? Real cool move, guy," or something like that. And then he didn't respond and lost a bunch of followers. That's so weird. I mean, you can't just go around tweeting that guys like DeMarcus Cousins, LeBron James, really anyone, but especially someone like that, in the most ideal scenario, I mean, that he's out. He probably cost someone trusting, someone foolish, a lot of money that night.
That's Yeah, I don't know. I just don't see. He probably had no clue, about the daily fantasy community that, people would be all over him if he just innocently put out a tweet of what he observed.
Yeah.
But yeah, now he knows.
Oh yeah. Now he knows that people go searching on Twitter. They search for DeMarcus Cousins and they see some jabroni over here writing that he's out.
Yeah, that's a great term. Yeah, he was basically a jabroni.
I love the word jabroni. So that guy, I'm sure he doesn't follow me. I wasn't very nice to him. No apologies, guy. Okay.
Yeah, and he deserved it.
Yeah, exactly. You deserve the term jabroni.
Yeah.
All right. Moving down here, I want to get your take on Hassan Whiteside. He's $7,600 on DraftKings. Obviously not a cash game play. $8,200 on FanDuel. But as we know, the Denver front court, an easy target for most players. Whiteside hasn't shown that upside recently, but who's going to stop him down low for Denver?
Yeah, here's the problem I'm running into. It is a great matchup. He's been kind of middling as of late, even though the matchups have been decent. We don't really know what's going on. He had a lingering injury. He had some backlash, some behavioral issues where he's, shoving Kelly Olynyk into the friggin' sideline for
Wasn't
no
it
reason.
back-to-back games where he got in a fight?
Yeah, so I don't really know what's going on. That's kind of concerning. So, yeah, just for tournaments, actually, I would rather go with Marc Gasol probably against Dallas. Dallas really doesn't have anyone to defend him that matches up very well against him. And he's just a solid pick for 35, 40 fantasy points, especially against the worst rebounding team in the league, the Mavericks.
Yeah, and that's something we've talked about a couple times. And in case you didn't realize, we're going to keep telling you, Dallas is terrible at rebounding the ball. The worst. We're talking worse than Philly, worse than New York, worse than all the teams that Larry Brown thinks could beat NBA teams. I mean, we're worse than everybody. So, yeah, I'm with you there. Marc Gasol, outside of DeMarcus Cousins, obviously, but at a $3,000 discount on FanDuel, I think he's if you're paying up for cash games, it's got to be Marc Gasol at that price.
Yep. And another guy I was looking at, Al Horford, Brook Lopez. Brook Lopez a little bit cheaper, but I think he's capped around 30 fantasy points, which won't hurt you at this price tag. But one guy I think we both agree on, a value play who could be, within the same production, is Steven Adams, especially if Enes Kanter out. He is the value pick at the position, even in a pretty mediocre matchup against Atlanta. But he'll see heavy minutes. I mean, he saw 38 last game when Kanter came out. I think it was sometime in the second half, fourth quarter maybe. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he's not a. This might be the first time in my DFS career that I play Steven Adams, just because I hate his game and I really don't like him as a player. I think he's a goon. He's a jabroni.
He is definitely.
Since that's the word of the day. Steven Adams is definitely a jabroni. But yeah, he can double and he can block like 3 or 4 shots. And at 5.1K on FanDuel and what's he on DraftKings? 4.5K, even better.
Tremendous.
Yeah, he's the value play.
Yeah, I mean, he can do all those things. What he can't do is grow a mustache. So keep trying there, Steven. But I'm with you. I mean, he's the obvious value play tonight, and I like him even if Kanter does go. Like you mentioned, I mean, he's been seeing over 30 minutes, even the games where Kanter was there. And you don't expect huge things, but he's going to be the rebounder. No Ibaka, maybe no Kanter. There's really no one else. I'm not trusting Mitch McGary. Not a chance. You could play him if you have a penance for punishment, but I don't.
He's kind of on the outs with Scott Brooks. I saw some comments from last game that Brooks, kind of was giving him some backhanded comments, like, what, we don't need another 3-point shooter on the floor, talking about they have Westbrook and Morrow and Waiters and all those guys. So, I mean, that's not what they're looking for out of their 4 and 5 spots. So, I don't think he's going to see the playing time.
No, not at all. I mean, he's just wildly inconsistent. I mean, there's a reason why McGary is. I mean, he's injury prone. He only really had a few good games at Michigan. I mean, as Big Ten fans, you and I know we each watched quite a bit of Mitch McGary, and I mean, the guy wasn't even that special of a player in college, if you ask me. He's a fringe player in the NBA at best.
Yeah, I mean, he just fills a role. He's a stretch 4, I mean, if you need it, but he's not going to be a consistent NBA starter at any point in his career, at least from what I see. But
yeah, I mean, unless something changes, I don't ever see him as a starter. So I'm with you there. That's going to pretty much wrap things up for us here on this Friday. Once again, a big slate, tons of injury news, so can't reiterate this enough. monitor Twitter. Find both of us. I'm at Big Italy 42. He's at Spencer_JL. At DF Cafe is our Twitter account. So hit us up if you're looking for information, anything like that for injuries. If you want to know who to follow, find me. I'll tell you some lists to follow, some guys for information so you don't have to search for it every day. But be cautious. Check out some guys that we played also, and check out all the great content we have at dailyfantasycafe.com as well.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, guys. We will see you again tomorrow.